Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life. Hey everybody, Brian Smith here with the I Am Team series and the Daily Influence. It is day 3 of Dave Evans, and he is going to introduce you to something new. It's and leadership and leadershit. And that's right, I did say it right. S-H-I-T, leadership and leadershit. And as you know, we all have a lot of shit in our leadership. And Dave is actually going to define that better. He's written this amazing book that I just got a signed copy of, so I'm excited. And the team back in the States is going to get their copies. But I'm not going to talk, because when I have guests, I like to let them talk and share their influence and allow you to find a way to bring that into your area of influence. So Dave, thanks again, and back to you.
It's great to do another episode. And I'm sure the listeners of Brian have heard loads about leadership from multiple sources. But I'd like to bring to your attention straight out the gate today that most leadership principles were invented last century. And we very rarely stop to realize that these days because there's so much going on. It's rehashed multiple times. I can think of back throughout my career so far of people that have been great leaders, depending on context or situations. I can also think of leaders I worked with that really weren't very nice people, but didn't mean it. And what I'd like to share with you in a minute is what leadership is. And so you can be clear about what leadership isn't. Before I do that, I'd like you to picture this scenario. You are working with somebody. Maybe you're the boss, maybe you're the colleague in this scenario. And let's just imagine for a second that you're in a one-to-one together doing what's called a review. And you're having a chat and you've got your disagreements, you've got your ideas. Maybe there's a few gaps in your perspectives. But let's say you conclude the review. You've both done some polite, perfunctory agreements where you've agreed but you didn't mean it. And then they leave, the boss leaves the meeting room and goes off to do their next thing. You leave and then you tell somebody about the review you just had. And maybe your energy is 5 out of 10, where 10 is supersonic. And you don't realize it at the time, but you're complaining a little bit by your sound about that you didn't really get much out of that meeting. That meeting I've just described to you is more common in most companies around the world today. And let's be clear, it's leadership. Right? Both parties weren't engaged in that hour. Worse still, if we were to calculate how much did that hour cost, imagine it was an hour, it would have been a very expensive item. And for the same money, you could have gone and bought yourself something really lovely from the shop or anywhere online and got much more pleasure out of it. And if you need any tips for that, I got loads. But let's clarify what leadership is, right? That's the point of this one today. Leadership is modeling the leadership required of our time, regardless of the consequences. That means, I'll give you a real current challenging subject, not covering up. Now, I only learned deep detail about covering up recently at a conference where somebody announced themselves live on stage and they introduced themselves for the first time in their life as Alex. And Alex educated all of us in the audience about what covering up is where maybe there's a discriminative comment in a meeting room that's not meant, but is offensive. And then somebody who's offended doesn't say anything. And then somebody else notices that someone was offensive and doesn't say anything either. That's covering up. That's not modeling the leadership required of our time. It's standing up for things when it matters. It's modeling things that matter all of the time. In our leadership principles that we also teach in our coaching business and our coaching, we talk about modeling the leadership required of others tomorrow, yourself first. That means you go first. It's not clean the toilets, go first. It's not doing things because nobody else does. It's not setting an example in the old way from the 70s. It's actually deciding, I'm going to ask people to improve tomorrow. I'm going to show them that I went there first myself. I'm going to show them I learned, even though it's hard. But with Leadership 2.0, there are 3 things you can practically do. And I'm going to quickly share them with you as to what they are and how you can do them. The first thing is model the leadership required of your time, regardless of the consequences. It's easy to do that when you know the following things. 1, what are your personal values? What guides you as a compass in your life? Stopping and thinking about maybe previous episodes of the podcast that maybe talked about these kind of things before, going on the IA site and finding other tools, downloading books, listening to Audible, all kinds of things you can do to discover what your personal values are. But when you know what they are, it's easier to live them. When you know what your values are, it's easier to then model the leadership required because you know who you are and what makes you who you are. Second thing, get good at being straight talking. Realize a constructive conversation with someone where you're basing on grace and truth is useful to anyone. And it's 2 ways. The moment you ask somebody for some constructive candor, you should be both partaking in the conversation. It should never be one way. Here's the third part. This one's my favorite and it's the most difficult. If you want to upgrade your leadership today and take one action from this short episode, all you've got to do is start practicing asking the people you lead, how do I change to help you get better? Or how do I change to help you fulfill your dreams? How do I change to make your job more fulfilling? How do I change to help you excel in any area of your life or business? Now, you might think those are really broad, massive questions. And by the way, they are. And John Maxwell would say, if you ask someone to tell you what their dreams are and they don't tell you, the lesson should explain itself. It means you don't have enough rapport yet. You don't have enough influence. But let's just stop one last time. If you can learn to ask somebody, how do you change? How open do you think they might be when they then see you change? Feel the difference in your leadership because you did change and notice other people talking about the change that you made. When you ask them to make a small evolution, to make an improvement rather than a change, how more open do you think they will be when they've seen you doing it first? This is about a new type of leadership that's not from last century. This is about putting other people first and asking them about it. This is more than giving a damn. This is modeling the leadership that our world needs today and doing it regardless of the consequences.